ברוכות הבאות, ladies. ברוכות הנמצאות. Welcome to our weekly shiur here at Ohel Sarah. I want to also thank the viewers that are tuning in, whether you're tuning in at Torah Anytime or whether you're tuning into ohelsarah.com. We want to thank you for joining us on a weekly basis, for being part of the fan base. We thank you so much for your support and your graciousness. I do have a couple of announcements to make, but I'm not going to make them right now. I'm going to make them later on during the shiur because we've got a lot of work that we need to cover today. And I hope that Be'ezrat Hashem, as a result of all the inspiration that's being drawn from these incredible shiurim here at the Ohel Sarah Center and at Torah Anytime that you guys log in, or ohelsarah.com that you log in to this exclusive Torah site for women. Be'ezrat Hashem, you should merit to see blessings in your life, to see continued spiritual elevation in your homes. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about what a home really means later on. By the way, before we even begin, I just want to say that if you hear little noise, we have our superintendent here doing some work there in the kitchen area, so don't mind the extra noise of the drills and a little bit of banking. Anyway, it doesn't hurt to hear noise here and there. This week's Parshat Korach, is famous for the tragic story that took place in the Midbar. You see, when Am Yisrael was in the desert for 40 years, there were many challenges. So the episode of Korach is one of the darkest moments in our nation's history. I'll quickly review the story so you get the gist of what went on. Korach was a member of Shevet Levi. He was actually Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom's first cousin. He gathered a group of people, including Datan ve'Amiram, the antagonists of Moshe dating back to the times of Egypt. And he gathered 250 members of the Sanhedrin, and they all joined him in a revolution against the leader of Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu, if you can somehow imagine that possibly to be true. And they somehow came to the conclusion that Moshe was power hungry, and that he appointed himself as the leader of the Jewish people, that he appointed his brother as a Cohen Gadol, Aharon Cohen. The rebels claimed that Moshe Rabbeinu was nepotistic because he put his family members in high positions. So Korach questioned Moshe Rabbeinu's authority, and he had quite a number of followers who supported him. And we all know the fate of Korach and his followers. The ground opened up and swallowed him, his family, his children, and all of his supporters. Never in history have we ever seen such a miraculous death. Think about it. The ground opens up and swallows up an entire assembly of people, and then it closes back up as if just for them. We're not talking about a sinkhole over here. The ground literally opened up and devoured all those involved in Korach's rebellion. It's a miracle. That's the short version of the story. The question is, why did Korach wait until now to wage his dispute against Moshe? After all, these job positions were given years before. Korach was obviously percolating for many years about this subject. He was stewing, and he couldn't wait to fight against Moshe. So why did he wait until this parasha, until this point in history to wage his rebellion? What was he waiting for all this time? The Ramban alav shalom has a very interesting theory. He says that Korach couldn't go after Moshe Rabbeinu because until this point over here, Moshe's political approval ratings were very high. You see, leaders go through stages. Sometimes they're very popular, at other times their popularity suffers. For a large period of time throughout the travels in the Midbar, Moshe Rabbeinu's ratings were very high. After all, he did so much for the people. He helped provide man so they could eat. The clouds of glory were protecting them in his merit. They had a well that was giving them fresh water every day. The accommodations that Moshe Rabbeinu helped to provide in the desert, they were beautiful. Any request the people made, Moshe handled it. Not only that, but even when Am Yisrael worshipped the golden calf, relatively speaking, there weren't that many casualties. Only 3,000 people died. That's not a lot compared to a whole nation. And then when HaKadosh Baruch Hu vowed to destroy the entire nation because of the Ma'aseh HaEgel, who defended us? Moshe Rabbeinu. He davened for 40 days and 40 nights just for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be able to forgive us. So Bnei Yisrael thought, wow, Moshe Rabbeinu is unbelievable. He got us off the hook. He saved our life. He's always there for us, somehow, some way. I mean, we were destined to die. And because Moshe Rabbeinu stepped in and he davened, HaKadosh Baruch Hu exonerated us. So during that time in the Midbar, Moshe was experiencing the highlight of popularity. The Ramban says that if Korach would have attempted to rebel against Moshe at that time, the people would have stoned him. So Korach was a smart and calculated man. He waited for the right time. He waited for the opportune moment that would be most effective. When did he decide to rebel against Moshe Rabbeinu? After last week's Parashat Shelach. What happened? 12 spies came back from scouting Eretz Yisrael, and they gave the most negative reports about the land. And Am Yisrael accepted the bad reports, and then they bemoaned their fate. We don't want to enter the land. We want to go back to Egypt. Please don't make us go in. This is disaster. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very upset at the people. And what did Hashem say? He says, you know what? Nobody's going into Eretz Yisrael, and all those who accepted the Meraglim's bad report is going to die in the Midbar. That's exactly what happened. Every Tisha B'Av for the next 40 years in the Midbar, Bnei Yisrael had to dig their own graves and lie in them during the night. The next morning, all those who died were covered with dirt, and all those who lived waited until the next year to see what their fate would be. During all those years that this was happening, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't protect them, and he didn't pray for them. He simply accepted their fate. So at that point, his popularity began to dwindle. Am Yisrael had claims against Moshe Rabbeinu. They were like, why don't you handle this for us? We're in trouble over here. Why aren't you praying for us? Get HaKadosh Baruch Hu to forgive us, like you did with the episode of the Egel. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't respond to the people. He had a good reason for that. And that's when Korach saw that Moshe's popularity was declining. He realized that Moshe was vulnerable and that it would be the perfect time to attack. At this stage of the game, Moshe isn't going to get the public support from the people because of the tragedy of the Meraglim. So Korach was a master politician. He knew exactly when to find weakness in Moshe's leadership, and then he capitalized on it. Korach waiting all this time was a calculated move that would be most effective for his rebellion. But the Rabbanim learn a great lesson about human nature from this story. You see, Bnei Yisrael were upset with Moshe after what happened with the spies. They had claims against him, like we said earlier. And I ask you, whose idea was it to send spies out to scout Eretz Yisrael? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu told the people not to send the Meraglim because HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised us that the land was good. You know whose idea it was to send the Meraglim? Am Yisrael's idea. And when the Meraglim came back, who gave the bad report about the land? The Meraglim. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu begged Am Yisrael not to believe them, they didn't listen to him, and they believed the bad reports anyway. They cried unnecessarily, even though Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to reassure them. So listen to this. They sent the spies. They believed the bad reports that the Meraglim came back with. They cried as a result of the bad reports. They didn't want to enter the land. And then when they were punished, whose fault was it? Moshe's fault. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? How can you blame this selfless leader? You were the ones guilty of everything, and then you point fingers and you blame the whole thing on Moshe? This is the nature of human beings, ladies. Human beings never want to take responsibility for their actions. They'll always find a way to point the finger in another direction. They'll always find a way to blame all their problems on someone else outside of themselves. This is one of the deficiencies of our generation. No one wants to take responsibility for their actions. I mean, you could have a serial killer in the courtroom, and his lawyer says, Your Honor, what do you expect from him? In the 7th grade, he had a teacher who failed him in math, and he was devastated. He never recovered from that bad grade. Do you expect anything else from such a person? He felt like society failed him, so in his rage, he killed 15 people. He's a misken. This is the mindset of people. Somehow it's never our fault. Someone else is to blame for the tragedies of our life. Someone else is to blame for the tragedies of our nation. A therapist can tell a patient, it's not your fault. It's your mother's fault because she didn't bring you up the right way. You suffered in the house, so you shouldn't be held accountable for the way you're behaving today. It's your father's fault. It's the society's fault. It's the fault of your teachers. It's the fault of your rabbis. Everyone in the world is guilty except the person himself. And that's exactly what happened thousands of years ago in our history. Bnei Israel sent the Meraglim. They believed them. They cried. And when you asked them, why'd you do this? I mean, look what kind of misery you brought upon yourself and the nation. They said, us? Well, what do? We didn't do anything. It's Moshe Rabbeinu's fault. It's not our fault. Go to him. Ladies, the Torah is teaching us a great lesson in Musar. One of the main principles of the tenements of Judaism is vidui, confession. How much emphasis do our rabbis and the Torah place on confession? So much so that the entire day of Yom Kippur we fast and we spend the day admitting our sins. If we were to let modern society write our confessions for Yom Kippur, you know what the machzor would look like if they wrote it? It'd say like this: God, please forgive my father. Hashem, please forgive my mother. Hashem, please forgive society. Please forgive my friends. Forgive my teachers because it was their fault and I'm innocent. Chat'u, pash'u, ve'av'u. But our religion says, Chatati, aviti, pashati. I have sinned. I have committed iniquity. This is a very important lesson. It's the lesson of holding yourself accountable for mistakes you made. Of course, we're all influenced by society, but ultimately, we have free will. Nobody can force you to act the way you do. A person is able to overcome his weaknesses and to control himself. But to blame mistakes on others is only an escape so that you shouldn't be held accountable for your own errors. And that's what happened in the Midbar. Bnei Israel was guilty on all accounts, and they were pointing fingers. Moshe, you're not a good leader. If you were a true leader, you would have saved us from the sin of the spies. Korach saw the sentiment of the Jewish people, and he decided that now was the perfect time to wage a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu. He saw that public opinion was swelling against Moshe, and he thought he would be successful. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that informs us of two types of disputes. The two disputes fall into two distinct categories. There is a machloket l'shem shamayim, a dispute for the sake of heaven, and there's a machloket shelo l'shem shamayim, a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven. The Mishnah tells us that a classic example of a machloket l'shem shamayim was that of Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were two great Tanaim who had two very different views on matters of Torah and Halakha. Bet Hillel's school of thought was usually more lenient, while Bet Shammai's ways were more strict. The Mishnah says that although these two schools of thought were always arguing with each other, and even though they did not see eye to eye on most issues, but their arguments were good arguments. Why? Because they argued l'shem shamayim. Their motivations were pure. Their intention was to arrive at the truth and discover what it is that Hashem really wants from us. Their debates weren't personal. There wasn't rivalry or competitiveness because they didn't have personal agendas. They were actually friends. After all the arguing and debating, they walked away with their arms wrapped around the other, despite their differences. That is the classic example of a machloket l'shem shamayim. And what example does the Mishnah give of a machloket shelo l'shem shamayim? The Mishnah states, Korach va'adato. Korach and his entire congregation. That machloket didn't stem from the right intentions, rather it was infused with kavod, with personal agendas, and a need for positions of superiority. So the Chachamim ask a question concerning this Mishnah. When we discuss the machloket of Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, we have two opposing sides with two opposing opinions and views. It's Bet Hillel versus Bet Shammai. But when the Mishnah discusses a machloket shelo l'shem shamayim, who do they name? Korach va'adato. Where's the opposing side? Shouldn't Moshe be the opposing side? It should say Korach va'adato versus Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Mishnah only mentions one side, that being Korach and his followers. Why does the Mishnah only give me Korach's side and doesn't mention the opposing side, Moshe Rabbeinu's side? So I heard two explanations that are very, very important for you to understand in life. And if you want bracha, listen very closely. The first explanation is that when you see a group of people coming to argue with a rabbi, with a rebbitzin, like in this case, is there a way to tell if they're coming l'shem shamayim or not? How would you know if their motivations are pure? Of course, if you ask them, they'll say, oh yeah, we're doing this l'shem shamayim, we're doing it for the good of everybody involved. Yeah, the Arabs also claim that they killed people l'shem shamayim. We all think that we're driven by pure intentions. So how are we supposed to know if a person is fueled by pure motives? One of the ways to know is by noticing whether or not the people in the group are getting along with one another. If within the group there is harmony and unity, then you could assume that they are purely motivated. But if the group that's battling the rabbi or a female spiritual mentor are fighting among themselves, and there's dissension and politics between them, then you know that their motivations are not pure. Each person is driven by his own agenda. This one over here is fighting the rabbi because he wants to be the leader. The other one is fighting the rabbi because the rabbi didn't go to his wedding and he's offended. Each person is fighting for different reasons, and sometimes those reasons contradict each other, although there's one common denominator. The common denominator is that all these people, they all don't like this rabbi or rebbitzin for one reason or another. That's the only commonality. Korach and his cohorts were rebelling against Moshe Rabbeinu, lo l'shem shamayim, because each person came with his own agenda. Korach rebelled against Moshe because he wanted to be the Cohen. Datan and Aviram were fighting against Moshe Rabbeinu because of old history between them. They wanted revenge against Moshe for things that happened already way back in Egypt. The tribe of Reuven also joined the rebellion against Moshe because they decided that since they were the firstborn of the Shevatim, why should Shevet Levi get all the elevated roles when Levi was actually third born? Reuven was actually fighting Korach, by the way, because they were both vying for the leadership position. So even among the rebels themselves, there was strife and division. That's what the Mishnah is telling us. Korach's rebellion was not l'shem shamayim. Why? Because it was Korach va'adato. The rebellion wasn't about Korach fighting against Moshe Rabbeinu. In Korach's encampment, there was discord and politics. There was no real unity within the group, other than the fact that they were united in one common cause against Moshe Rabbeinu. That is not a faction, that is l'shem shamayim. But when we talk about Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, the tzaddikim, everybody was on the same page and they all had the same goal, which was to understand God's truth. There was unity between both schools of thought. And that's how you know it was l'shem shamayim. That's the first explanation. But now I want you to hear the second explanation, and this is the lesson that I want you to carry with you for life. And if you listen closely, like I said, it will bring you such bracha and hatzlacha. This is not something I made up. This is something that Chachamim say, and even modern day rabbis. Rav Shimon Schwab, alav shalom, offers us another explanation based on plenty of mifarshim. He says that there's another way of telling whether or not a dispute, a machloket, is l'shem shamayim. And that's if those who are disputing are actually hearing each other's position in the argument, which means that you're allowed to disagree and argue with somebody. You're allowed to have a different opinion and even be resolute concerning your opinion. But if you are truly motivated, if you really have pure intentions, you'll hear what the other side has to say as well, says Rav Shimon Schwab. You have to listen to the other side and digest what the other side told you. You have to swallow what you just heard. You have to analyze it. You have to hear the other side's perspective and approach. And after you've heard the other side, you could still, by the way, reserve the right to your opinion. You could still do that. But at least your intentions are l'shem shamayim, because you gave the other side a chance to speak their minds. Such a machloket was the kind between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. They heard each other out. They actually took the time to listen to the other's arguments. Now, how do we know that they gave each other the right to defend their positions and that they heard each other out? Because the Gemara of Pesachim says that when Hillel, alav shalom, stood up to give his class in front of his students to discuss Torah, he would open up by saying the following: My dear Talmidim, let me first explain to you what our rivals Bet Shammai says about this inyan. I want you to hear what Bet Shammai's position is on what we are about to discuss. He actually explained Shammai's opinion to them first. And only after he explained Shammai's opinion to the class, he would then say, but after all of this, we still hold this way. What does that demonstrate? Hillel understood what Shammai was teaching. He actually took it into consideration. He respected his life and his opinions. He heard him out. He realized that there was another side that has to be explored before drawing a conclusion. Rav Schwab says that if you're really looking for the truth in any story of life, if you're really in it, l'shem shamayim, you'll consider that there's another side to the story. You will consider the other person's opinion and his views. But if you have your own agenda, and you're only looking to win and to see to it that your side is maintained and that you're victorious, then you're not going to be willing to hear anybody else's opinion but your own. When the other side is begging you for a chance to express his side and you refuse to come to the table to listen, and you close your ears and you close your mind, Chachamim say you're in big trouble, because you're not in it l'shem shamayim. No, you're not. You're in it for every other reason but for the sake of heaven. You have personal agendas. Maybe it's jealousy. Maybe you think you're protecting your own family member. Maybe you think you're doing it l'shem shamayim to save the whole world, but you can't save anybody, and you yourself will not save yourself if you're not doing the right thing. So the Mishnah is hinting to us that Korach didn't take the time to hear Moshe Rabbeinu's side of the story. How do we know? Because the Mishnah says that the classic example of a machloket that was not l'shem shamayim was that of Korach va'adato versus who? Versus nobody. In Korach's mind, there wasn't any other side of the story. There wasn't any other opinion other than his. There was nobody on the other side of the table. He never took the time to listen to what Moshe Rabbeinu had to say. Moshe Rabbeinu was screaming, please, Korach, give me a chance to talk. What are you doing over here? This is crazy. What's Korach's response? I don't want to hear anything. I know you're going to convince me. You're going to tell me that you're a shaliach of Hashem. It was a one-sided argument that started with Korach and ended with Korach. He felt that he was right from the beginning till the very, very end. He felt his reasons were legitimate. He even felt he had evidence. He decided it's not necessary to hear the other side's opinion or listen to the evidence that the other side has to present. So you tell me, how could this possibly be l'shem shamayim? All the Chachamim say that the machloket of Korach va'adato was exactly that. It was Korach and all his cohorts and nobody else on the other side of the table. There was no other side. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't even exist in the argument. He was pasul and he remained pasul. What a lesson of life this is. Therefore our Rabbanim tell us that such a situation can never be l'shem shamayim, and you should know that there is no bracha in that. If you do that to somebody, look what happened to Korach. He did what he did and he ended up in the ground. The ground opened up and swallowed him. The Rabbanim of the Gemara tell us the following. כשם שפרצופיהם של אדם אינם דומות זה לזה, כך דעותיהם אינם שוות זה לזה. Just like no two people look alike, no two people think alike. Even identical twins are not purely identical. The Gemara is telling us that that's the nature of people. Just like there's a diversity in the way people look, so too there's a diversity in the way people think. Rav Shlomo Eger, alav hashalom, asks, Why does the Gemara give us this example that just like there are no two people who are alike, there are no two people who, just like there are no two people who look alike, there are no two people who think alike. Why give me that example? Why can't the Gemara just simply state, no two people think alike, period, that's that? Why do I need the example that just like no two people look alike, no two people think alike? And Rav Eger explains the following. When you see somebody who doesn't look like you don't get angry. No, you don't. It doesn't upset you. If someone doesn't look the way you look, it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't involve you because that's how the person was created, and you know that. We all tolerate a person's looks no matter how different they appear from us. So the Gemara is teaching us that just like you tolerate someone else's looks and it doesn't bother you so much, you should be able to remain open-minded and tolerate someone else's opinion, even if that opinion is different from yours. Now, don't misunderstand me here. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with every person on the planet. You're allowed to have an opinion, and like I said, you could even be resolute with your opinion. But the least you're obligated to do, like we said, is listen to the other side. The judges in a Jewish courtroom always must hear both sides of a story before they can allow themselves to give a ruling. They are not allowed to draw any conclusions if they did not hear the other side. They have to give the other side a chance to defend itself. They have to hear both opposing sides in order to analyze the overall picture and form a very clear and accurate opinion. Only then can they make a judgment. Imagine a person is strolling into a bed din or a secular court. They are the plaintiffs coming before the judge, and then they say, yes, we're here to talk to you about a rebellion that we're waging against Ploni Almoni. That's the defendant. The judge says, well, where's the defendant? Oh, we didn't call him to the bed din. Why not? Well, we have evidence here, and we don't need them to come. We already drew a conclusion. We're just here to get the final approval from the judge. So you mean Ploni Almoni doesn't even know you're here? No. Does Ploni Almoni know that you have a case against him? I think he does. He heard it through the grapevine. What does he have to say about it? We don't know. We don't want him here. We don't want to hear what he has to say. Why not? Oh, Mr. Judge, you don't know Ploni Almoni. Ploni Almoni is very charismatic. Ploni Almoni is very persuasive. Ploni Almoni has such spiritual qualities. We're afraid that if we would call Ploni Almoni here to this courtroom, the judge might just be swayed by his wonderful charismatic personality. We do want to say on the sidelines, Judge, that happens to be that Ploni Almoni is a very modest person who has sterling midot. And the judge says, you know what? Let me get this straight. Ploni Almoni doesn't know you're here. Ploni Almoni does have what to say, but you're not giving him an opportunity to defend himself. I would assume Ploni Almoni also has evidence, and you're here and you want a judgment from me before I can have a chance to, and you think that he's going to persuade me, and what are you going to do today? Am I going to be charmed by your good looks? Am I going to be persuaded by your convincing arguments? You know what? The judge says to them, you are all Rashaim. And even though the defendant is not here, I am dismissing this case in the zechut of this defendant who is not here today. And the ones who are going to be banned, and the ones who are going to be in contempt of this court is you. And you're going to be fined and you're going to be penalized. That's what happens in Shamayim when you don't hear the other side. When you draw your conclusions and you haven't let the other person allow himself to tell you what they have to say. So we have to be very careful with that. Now, I just want to point out that I am not referring to a situation where there is an opposing side to Torah values altogether. I mean, if a reformed rabbi or worse would want us to hear his opinion, we can't listen to the words of the Reformed or anyone else because they oppose the Torah. What I'm talking about over here is a case where both parties involved are observant Jews who are following the Torah and they're not rebelling against it. We're talking about situations where both parties have different approaches, but the goal is the same. You could have different approaches to Torah, but the hashkafa still has to fall in line with authentic Judaism. As long as the approach is within the framework of Torah, there is room for you to listen and even to accept the other side. Think about it. I mean, the Hasidim, the Lita'im, the Sfaradim, we all have different approaches in halakha. We have even different approaches in hashkafa, but we are all still in the framework of Torah. But if a person is obviously approaching you with ideologies and arguments that are outside the framework of Torah, and it doesn't look remotely close to authentic Judaism, as was taught to us by our ancient and holy rabbis, then there should be no tolerance for that. You gotta close your ears. That was Korach's problem. He didn't take the time to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu's argument. It was only Korach va'adato. The Holy Malbim, alav shalom, asks a question in this parasha. What made this episode of Korach more severe than all the other episodes in the Torah? Now, why do I say that it's more severe? Because when the Jewish people worshipped the Egel, the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu prayed so hard, he davened on behalf of the Jewish people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should forgive them. And in most cases where the Jewish people were disobedient, Moshe defended them. But in this case over here, it's astonishing, but Moshe Rabbeinu did not ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to forgive the rebels. He told Hashem the opposite. He said, Hashem, please kill them in a miserable way. Make sure they die an unnatural death. It should be a mitah meshuna. It should be a death that has a miracle that never happened in the history of mankind. Let the ground open up and swallow these rebels and all of their furniture and all the house and the whole thing. It's not like Moshe Rabbeinu to speak this way. Why did he become so upset? This is extreme. Why this time was he so unraveled to the point where he asked God to destroy these rebels? Why didn't he daven on their behalf like he did for the Jewish people when they worshipped the golden calf? What made this machloket more severe than the rest of the things that Am Yisrael did in the past? Says the Malbim. Ladies, you gotta listen to this. It's a very deep yesod. Says the Malbim. Korach's rebellion struck at the very heart of the nation's faith. What does that mean? Astonishingly, we, the Jewish people, are still observing the Torah HaKadoshah that was given to us on Har Sinai 3,000 years ago. And it is the same Torah, unchanged, unaltered. So what's our faith based on? If somebody asked you, why do you follow the Torah? On whose word do you keep this Torah? Based on whose word? So some of you might say, whose word? Well, actually my parents told me. My teachers taught me. And then if that person would say, and who told them? My grandfathers told my father, and my grandmothers taught my mother and their teachers before them. Oh, so you're basing your entire faith on a tradition that's brought down from one family member to the next? That's the whole thing? And you say, well, not really, because if you trace it all the way back, to Mount Sinai, there were eyewitnesses who saw with their own eyes how Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, came down from the mountain and gave the Jewish people the Holy Torah. Ladies, Matan Torah was one of the most miraculous and momentous days in history. Over 3 million Jews witnessed the giving of the Torah HaKdosha to the Jewish people. They were all standing there. It was undeniable. All the people saw how HaKadosh Baruch Hu designated Moshe Rabbeinu as the archetypal and quintessential leader. So our religion is firmly established. We have roots. We had 3 million eyewitnesses providing the veracity of our religion. I don't think there was ever an event like this in the history of mankind in any nation. All the other religions, Christianity or Islam, their religion is based on the eyewitness account of 1 or 2 people. So which nation has the strongest proof? We have 3 million witnesses. The Muslim religion is based on the word of one man named Muhammad, who woke up one morning and said, I had a dream that God told me that the Jewish people are no longer his chosen nation. From this day on, we are the ones that are holy and chosen. Christianity came along and based its premise on one man, a Jewish man named Yeshua, who had a few followers. 2 of the followers, after he was crucified, said, we saw Yeshua being resurrected, and he told us that the Torah HaKdosha is now going to be reformed. Wow. I also had a dream once. So what? So I ask you, who has stronger proof? We have 3 million witnesses, and they have one man who had a dream or a nightmare, however you look at it. Ladies, it's important to remember that our religion is firmly established because of what happened at Har Sinai. Korach came along all of a sudden, and what did he say? Moshe, listen, I don't deny you. I know that you're the one who brought the Torah to us, to the Jewish people. We know that you're a prophet, no doubt about that. Korach's entire claim was what? Moshe, I'm upset because you appointed Aharon all on your own. Technically, it was a very small claim. Korach wasn't happy that supposedly, according to Korach, Moshe Rabbeinu allocated job positions all on his own. He thought that, not necessarily true. So you know what Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned about and why he got all unraveled and reacted in such an extreme fashion? He thought to himself, if Moshe lets Korach get away with this rebellion, you know what would happen to the future generations? The people might start to say, oh, if Moshe was suspected of appointing positions all on his own, maybe he also gave the Torah all on his own. Maybe the Torah wasn't transmitted by God after all. Such a situation would cast accusations and doubt on the entire historical episode of Matan Torah. Because if Moshe Rabbeinu could appoint jobs without the approval of the Ribono Shel Olam, who knows what else he did without the approval of God? And then Moshe Rabbeinu would now become a very controversial figure in our history and might cause people to think that the Torah HaKadosha was composed by Moshe Rabbeinu and not by God himself. And then what would take place if that would happen? Judaism as we know it would chas v'shalom be over. If there is doubt concerning the veracity of Moshe Rabbeinu, that would jeopardize the Torah that he received min hashamayim. It would jeopardize the foundations of our faith and destroy Bnei Yisrael, Bnot Yaakov. It would destroy the house of Israel. Speaking of a house, I want to take the time now to make that announcement that I wanted to make. Big news. It was b'sha'a tova u'mutzlachat, and with the blessings of Hashem and His shlichim here on earth, specifically Rav David Hanania Pinto Shalita. Big news. As some of you know, Ohel Sarah had received a bracha from the Rav so that we could expand and take the organization to the next level. And we just, Baruch Hashem, a few days ago, bechesed verachamim from Shamayim, and with the help of some people, closed on a house in Lakewood, New Jersey that will function as a place where we could host events and lectures and use it as a learning center for women. And I want to just repeat that we specifically wanted a home and not a building because we want the women who join us to feel the warmth, the comfort, and the security that a house has to offer. We want women to walk in and be embraced by the coziness of a living room. We want them to feel free to walk into a kitchen and make themselves at home. We want the women and young girls to know that they have a home away from home that they're always welcome to pop into. Although we're still continuing our good work in Brooklyn, and we're still going to have events in Shiurim in Brooklyn, we are using the house in Lakewood, New Jersey, to expand and to spread Torah over there too, to continue the Bet Hashem. A house, by the way, a bait means a mortgage, taxes, water, gas, and electric bills. It means that every time something goes wrong, we're the ones who have to take responsibility for it because we're now the landlords, Baruch Hashem. So I'm asking every woman and young girl who tunes in and who enjoys these lectures to please help us raise the funds that we need to help with the new house. Please join me in our expansion of a Torah center for women and young girls. I bless every woman who will donate and become our partner in this venture. I bless you with all the blessings that are written in our holy Torah. And the merit of your tzedakah, may you feel joy and have happiness and see miracles this year, and you will see miracles, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we're asking you women to please band together. Please help me spread Torah all the more. We're opening up a special account for this house where funds that are collected are going to be used for all the good work that we're going to be doing this coming year, books, food, events, the maintenance of the house. So if you women want to be my personal partner in creating a beautiful, warm, and cozy home for women to gather in, simply log on to www.ohelsarah.com, Sarah is without an H, and click on the donate button, and please indicate that you are donating for the sake of the new house, or you can call our office at 718-500-4550, and we could take your credit card information over the phone, or we could give you the information on where to send your tax-deductible check to. Ladies, you women are going to be the ones who help bring the Mashiach. That's no doubt. That's something that's been foretold for centuries. Help make that happen. And I thank you for all the times that you reached out and that you helped. And I thank you in advance for the help that you're going to give now in helping me create a home for your fellow sisters. Bezrat Hashem, Yiratzon, you should experience harmony in your own home. You should see nachat from your children and grandchildren and see generations of Torah observant descendants flourishing and prospering. Be'ezat Hashem. And of course, the ultimate zechut that we should all have is to see the greatest home, the greatest bait built in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Now moving on with the shiur, ladies. So we said that Korach was creating a situation where the very foundations of faith were going to be destroyed, because his whole claim was that Moshe Rabbeinu was appointing himself and the people around him without the permission of Hashem, that he was a self-proclaimed leader and choosing people in his own family in positions of power. And people might come along and say, well, I mean, if he appointed himself and he appointed these people and he did it all on his own without God, who knows what else he did? Maybe the whole Torah was given by Moshe, written by Moshe, and created by Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned about that. And he said, if Korach isn't punished in the most miraculous of ways by God, the people are always going to second guess our Torah's purity that descended from Shamayim. Therefore, ladies, listen to this, it's a very deep thing. Just like the Torah had to be given with miracles, Korach va'adato had to be eliminated with a miracle, so no one should ever doubt that Moshe Rabbeinu did all of this all on his own. And if he didn't do anything on his own, he didn't write the Torah on his own either. Which means that everything he did was according to God's word. So you know why Moshe Rabbeinu overreacted? Says the Malbim. Because he was preserving the Torah for future generations. Because if Korach would get away with what he did, people would doubt Moshe and our faith would have been compromised. That's why it was vital for Moshe Rabbeinu to crush Korach's rebellion. And you know what? The same 3 million people that witnessed the Torah HaKadeshah being given at Har Sinai saw Korach va'adato swallowed up by the ground. That was like a second Matan Torah. It was like a reconfirmation that Moshe Rabbeinu is a Kadosh Baruch Hu's servant, and that everything Moshe does and did was according to God's will, that Moshe is emet, v'torato emet. You know what lesson we learned from this? Our leaders are very smart. Moshe Rabbeinu said, if Korach va'adato get away with this, the consequences in the future will be disastrous. So although we think that Moshe Rabbeinu was overreacting at the time, and we could say, Moshe, what's the big deal over here? If Korach thinks that you appointed yourself, you know you didn't. Just let him talk. Say what he wants to say. He's being crazy right now. Why are you getting so upset to the point that you're praying for his demise? But Moshe Rabbeinu knew. He saw the future. He was a chacham. Ezu chacham. Ha'oet hanolad. He said, if people will start to think that I did things all on my own, without God's permission, in 1,000 years from now, you'll have conservatives and reform people walking around saying, yeah, just like Moshe appointed his brothers and family in high positions, and he appointed himself as a leader, he also probably wrote the Torah all by himself. Torah is merely a fabrication of man. Moshe said, we cannot let that happen. We can't let people think that the Torah is synthetic. The Torah was not made in China, people. We can't allow any doubts, Moshe says, to creep into people's minds. That's why we have to be so careful, ladies. When our holy chachamim make takanot, when they make certain decrees, when they create certain fences around the laws, we have to be so careful not to trample upon those fences and break loose. Because when even one fence is broken, What's going to stop the next generation from breaking the next fence and the one after that? When all the protective fences that are meant to guard our Torah are broken down, what's left of our religion? Or better yet, who will be left to guard and maintain the Torah and Judaism? If everyone is busy breaking through the fences and running out, who's going to be left within the gates? A guarded Torah is a secure Torah. A protected Torah ensures the safety of our neshama and future generations. Ladies, you have to consider the future. What you think isn't such a big deal today may have dire consequences in 10 years from now. If Moshe Rabbeinu would have sat silently, without prayer, and allowed Korach and his cohorts to do what they did, there would be nothing left of Judaism today, ladies. Chas v'shalom. You know, in our last few sessions, we spoke about the power of the Jewish woman and the great influence that you have on your household. You are the ones who could uphold the fences that were put in place to protect you, your families, and future generations. You have a tremendous responsibility in this very challenging generation. As it is, this generation is suffering from a spiritual decline. Don't you ever consider what your family is going to look like in 50 years from now? What your great-grandchildren's homes are going to look like in 50 years from now? You are the motivators of your home. You're the National Guard of our nation, and you have to see to it that every aspect of authentic Torah is upheld, guarded, and maintained. If you study this week's Parshat, you're going to learn that because of Korach's wife, he was motivated to wage an entire rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu. And where did he, his family, and followers end up? In the Adamah. They were buried alive, and they were kept alive under the ground all these years as a punishment for their crime. Korach is still screaming out from the ground, says the Gemara. He's screaming out, Moshe emet v'torato emet. Chaval for him. He let his wife influence him in the wrong way. Chaval for her. She influenced him in such a disastrous way. A woman can build, a woman can destroy. Ladies, I urge you to love your families the right way and treasure the Torah that's keeping that family of yours protected. Consider the future and remain within the fences of authentic Torah so that future generations will have a chance at surviving. May we soon witness with our own eyes a third Matan Torah, so to speak, and witness with millions and millions and millions of people the final Geula. Amen Ken, Yeh Ratzon.